ride together,
we die together.
Bad marriage for life.
Would you say she has been instrumental in you and I redefining our relationship?
I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
I'm still dealing with foolishness.
Don't. No, because she don't just...
The honesty and the authenticity and the broader spectrum of the possibilities of who I am is actually better than Will Smith.
Yo, I like pretty girl.
It's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal, but beautiful.
The way my mind works, I can only excel for a woman.
I like pretty girls. That's crazy. See, that's how that song works. You just put it on, they just show up. Yeah.
When I was 15 years old, my first girlfriend cheated on me.
Oh.
And then what did you do, Jada?
Well, I got into a different kind of entanglement.
An entanglement?
Yes. Yes.
A relationship?
Yes.
And I remember making a decision that nobody would ever cheat on me again. And the way I was going to do that is by being the biggest actor on earth.
I just wanted to feel good. Mm-hmm. It had been so long since I felt good.
You got to be able to take abuse. You got to be able to have people talk crazy about you.
So you can't just use me for social media and not, don't just start rolling. I'm standing in my house. Don't just start rolling.
Constellation of ideas of perfection that we called Will Smith.
And the whole time I'm like, the little boy that wants mommy to say everything was wonderful.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, Will Smith, golden boy of the 90s, released a new song and music video that had the internet ripping him apart for how absolutely embarrassing it was. The song, I Like Pretty Girls, has led a lot of people to question if he's evolved artistically at all since his 20s. Not only is the song corny and not good, but it's gotten people wondering if Will understands that time has moved on and he's not the young star he once was. A young man rapping about pretty girls is one thing. A 56-year-old father of two has a whole different connotation to it. It feels sad and washed up. The internet has described it as overcompensating, the most unique way of coming out of the closet, the gentleman doth protest too much, and more. The Independent even described it as masculinity in crisis. Almost everyone seems to be in agreement. The song and music video reads as some weird attempt to regain his long-lost brand of the cool, charming, competent, and successful star the ladies loved. It reads as a desperate overcompensation to the tragic reality of his love life, which famously was his wife having an entanglement with a much younger man, and then inviting Will on her podcast to interview him, well, lecture him, really, about how important it was for her finding who she was. That damaged his reputation almost irreparably. Not being cheated on, he could have recovered from that. No, what really made the public question his cool guy persona was the fact he appeared to allow the disrespect publicly and even sat there looking like he was trying not to cry while, as I said, she lectured him. No more did he seem like the guy who deserved respect, who was cool and in control of his life and his career, who seemed to embody the positive masculinity of a happy father and husband with a wildly successful career. Now he seemed like a tragic figure in the eyes of the public. Someone to be pitied, not admired. A pathetic figure who went along with his own public humiliation, who didn't stand up for himself, nodded along as she justified her entanglement as being part of her healing journey, let her sit there and say it was about her being kind and helping a young man in trouble, because an older woman starting a sexual affair with a young man who's hooked on whatever he was hooked on is definitely being kind and a mentor and helping that young man and not taking advantage of someone younger than you in a vulnerable position and exploiting them for your own gain. But Jada's a saint in her own eyes, so no. Everything she does is always because she's wonderful and selfless. That's something you've got to understand about Jada. Speaking of healing journeys, does your health ever stress you out? I know I found myself on several occasions searching online some random collection of symptoms way into the night until I'm diagnosing myself with all kinds of fatal conditions and I'm absolutely convinced my head is about to explode. Some of you have probably been there too. Imagine instead of that, you could just easily book a real doctor without waiting for office hours and with availability in the next day or two. Booking a doctor's appointment can seem like the biggest faff. I know that for me, I am terrible about putting them off for this reason. I once had tonsillitis and put it off and didn't go until I was delirious and someone else had to call the doctor's office for me because I couldn't speak as my voice was gone. But that's what's so great about ZocDoc, the sponsor of today's video. You can find and book a doctor with just a few clicks and without the need for a phone call, so you can put down the 2 a.m. doom scroll and set your mind at ease. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. From mental health to dentistry, eye care, skin care, and everything in between. ZocDoc makes it easy to book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. With ZocDoc, you can filter for doctors by insurance, location, and specialities, and see reviews by verified patients so you can choose the best, most convenient care for you. When you found the doctor you need, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and instantly book with just a few clicks. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. No need to call the doctor's office and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online. So don't spend another night doom scrolling yourself into a panic. Skip the guessing, see real-time availability, and book a doctor who actually fits your needs. Go to ZocDoc.com/Galatea, also linked down below in the description, to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Now back to the video. Anyway, Will sat there, listened to that, let her justify all her actions of that, nodded along, laughed along, and he didn't call her out on it. Maybe if she'd spoken to him with any real sense of remorse and accountability, maybe if she'd apologised for hurting him deeply or expressed gratitude for him taking her back, maybe then the public wouldn't have judged him so harshly for sticking with her. But all everyone saw was a man who was allowing someone to kick him in the teeth and then humiliate him for it, and that didn't fit with his public image. And then of course came the Oscars slap, which might have been an attempt to grab back some of the respect he'd lost, but all people saw was a fragile ego that couldn't take a joke and sucker slapped a much smaller man, and his reputation sank even further through the floor. Forget about Will Smith being seen as the man. He was barely even seen as a man anymore. The power dynamic looked like a little boy being manipulated by his toxic mummy, and not like a partnership between an adult man and his wife. And now there's the song, I Like Pretty Girls. A song which could have been written and performed by a 12-year-old boy trying to convince everyone that he's cool, honest, and the ladies really do love him. Promise. Overcompensation to his lost masculinity? You can see why people think so, but perhaps Will's song and music video was more telling than he would have liked. He made the decision in the music video to have himself portrayed as tiny next to these giant women. At one point, he even appears on the bottom of one of the women's shoes. Oof. The symbolism couldn't be any heavier. I mean, perhaps that's reaching, but I really don't think so. The unconscious mind is a powerful thing, and it really was a strange decision to have himself shown as so small and insignificant next to these huge and powerful beings that are women. Creativity often reveals things about the creator. If this was him trying to regain back his masculinity, it backfired. Does he like pretty girls, or does he feel overwhelmed and inferior around them? Because that's what the music video looked like and seemed to communicate. A blatant symbolic display of the utter powerlessness the public believe Will Smith has when it comes to women. Or maybe one woman in particular. Like she could easily crush him with the heel of her sharp, shiny shoe. Talk about communicating that you get walked all over. So I was going to make this video based around a recent interview of him that I saw where he still seems unable to take any accountability of what he did to Chris Rock. So that was the topic I started with, but the more I dived into interviews of both him and Jada, the more it became clear, from Will's own words, that he has been chasing the approval of women his whole life. Once he even referred to Jada as a mummy he wanted to make proud. No, I'm not joking. I'm still going to talk about the original interview clip later, where he doesn't take accountability for Chris Rock again, or it sounds like that. I will still talk about that later, but that's taking more of a back seat because as I dived more into this topic and watched interviews by Will and heard him speak about his relationship to his wife and to women, I realised the more interesting topic wasn't the fact that he has a huge ego, even though arguably he does. The more interesting topic is the case study of a man who chased fame to get women to love him, and whose public image of being the man who had it all was more important than the reality, and how, in the end, that never brought him the validation he sought, which is why I now think we're seeing this very public crash out. You can't develop an identity when you spend your life seeking approval, and eternally trying to make a disapproving mother figure proud. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Galatea, and this is Acis, my dearly departed, and today we're going to be talking about how fame will never buy you validation, why money will not guarantee you happiness, and why desperately chasing approval will not make you love yourself. So it's not just the Pretty Girls song that is cringing people out and making him seem out of touch. Will is suddenly all over influencer pages with people way younger than him, and it is a little bit embarrassing, and it does seem like he's trying to be like in with them a bit too much. Like with KSI, suddenly is KSI's best friend, or an XQC, or like random TikTokers for random weird TikTok dances or whatever the hell he's doing. People, like I said, a lot younger than him. And then there was the embarrassing surprise performance in London where no one was enjoying his music, and him and Rita Ora were like the drunk auntie and uncle at a wedding trying to party with teenagers, was how it came across, and it was a bit painful to watch. He seems so much like he's trying to regain his old brand back after the Oscars slap, and trying too hard to seem like chilled, happy, and likable. The forced positivity is painful and coming across as deeply inauthentic. So, like I said in the introduction, what also prompted this video was an interview clip I saw where he wasn't taking accountability for the slap, and he invented a new word to talk about the transcendence of the Oscars slap. It was brutal. Brutal, yet beautiful. Yeah, we will get to all that, and why I think it's been driven by his desperate need for approval. Also, feel free to join Patreon to support the channel. Do lots of different videos on there. We sometimes do a book club that is very irregular and informal, but it's called the Informal Book Club. Talk about other things. In my last Patreon video, we responded to hate comments from the last YouTube video I did. So it's kind of other stuff, behind the scenes stuff. If you want to support the channel, you're also welcome to join us over there. In the show BoJack Horseman, a cartoon satirising Hollywood using anthropomorphic animals, and which, despite the ridiculous premise, actually manages to be a rather compelling look at humanity and the emptiness of fame, in this show, BoJack, the main character, his biggest nemesis is Mr. Peanut Butter. Like BoJack, Mr. Peanut Butter is also an actor past his glory days. But unlike the cynical, depressed, alcoholic, and mean-spirited BoJack, Mr. Peanut Butter is optimistic, enthusiastic, likeable, charismatic, eager to entertain and to be loved, and thinks of BoJack as his best friend, probably because Mr. Peanut Butter hates being disliked by anyone. Mr. Peanut Butter, for these reasons, is portrayed as a golden retriever. As we get deeper into the show, however, we realise that Mr. Peanut Butter might be just as messed up by fame as BoJack, just in a different way. His enthusiasm and optimism is always surface level. He lacks any real depth or sense of who he is. He remains emotionally stunted and unable to grow well into middle age, and this is reflected in his failed relationships. Relationships which fail despite his over-eagerness to please his partners, because he's actually incredibly egotistical, and his desire to please is driven more by building up his ego rather than genuinely caring for the people around him. Mr. Peanut Butter thrives on attention and the approval of others and his public image, unable to really look at himself and find meaning or validation or happiness there. One moment which exemplifies this is when he proposes to Diane, an introverted, cynical writer who is anxious, shy, and hates being in the spotlight. Grand displays of love don't mean much to Diane when compared to a deep connection with someone who understands her. Mr. Peanut Butter knows this about Diane because she's been upset with him over this before. When he proposes to her, he even verbalizes, "There are no cameras, this is just me and you. Will you marry me?" And as soon as Diane says yes, all the lights come on and a camera crew comes out and balloons come down and people appear, because Mr. Peanut Butter doesn't really understand the value of an intimate moment if no one is watching, if he doesn't get approval for it. He doesn't know how not to perform and make everything an ego display of how marvellous he is, even when he knows that Diane doesn't want this. What's the point of being a loving partner if people aren't there to see that he's a loving partner? What's the point of being a happily married man in a successful relationship with a perfect life if no one knows about it? All Mr. Peanut Butter wants is to be a good boy and to be seen as a good boy so he can feel better about himself. On a totally unrelated note, when Jada was in the midst of what sounded like a depressive episode, for her 40th birthday, Will hired a documentary team.
Your 40th birthday was my low point. I had hired a documentary team. I traced Mommy's family roots. Her 40th birthday was gonna be my thing. Mary J. Blige performed, I debuted the film, all of that. It was gonna be the thing that lifted her out of this midlife crisis, and it was gonna be my deepest, most beautiful proclamation of love, and we did it.
He'd hired this team to trace her roots and even found tapes Jada had never heard before that her grandmother recorded in the last months of her life. So I winced when he was talking about this. Is finding the tapes of her dead grandmother a lovely thing to do? Yes, it is. But if you have tapes that I've never heard before, of someone I love who is now dead, do not play them to me in a room full of people with cameras there. That's intimate, that's private, and that's also not going to put me in the mood for a party. No. I would probably want to cry and be melancholy for the rest of the evening, like just thinking about that person and just be like alone or just, you know, with not many people around.
She's listening to these never before heard tapes of one of the dearest people she's ever known in her life in front of all of these people. So she's holding it together, she's getting it together. Then I have Mary J. Blige performing. The whole time I'm like, the little boy that wants mommy to say everything was wonderful, right? And she's having a really difficult emotional time.
Tell me that is not Mr. Peanut Butter. The eager look like a Labrador, like wanting her to say that he's a good boy, even. Like, he verbalizes that. Also, the not reading the room. I mean, yeah, oof, that is a bit of a misstep. Like, he didn't have to show her those tapes in front of everybody to win brownie points, is kind of how it sounds. I mean, no point going into that, he knows that now, that's why they were talking about it. Also, though, referring to your wife as your mummy that you want approval from, we're going to get to that, but I think that's an important aspect of how Will thinks about women as vehicles for approval or to boost his ego. I'm not giving Jada a free pass, believe me. I do not like that woman. But yeah, it's interesting when you see Will's mentality towards women too. It's interesting.
And we were talking about the next day, and there were things planned for the next day, and she said, I'm not sure I want to do anything the next day. You can just cancel it. And I said, well, let's keep it, and then tomorrow you can decide. She was like, I'm telling you now I don't want to do anything tomorrow. And I said, well, it's okay. We'll just wait and see.
I just wanted to have intimate time.
Just intimate time. And I was like, well, I'll cancel tomorrow. She was like, it's my birthday. Yeah. Right? And she's told me that the party was the most ridiculous display of my ego. Woo. Crushed, right? And to this day, I know I was crushed because it was true. Yeah. It wasn't a party for her.
Yeah.
So this really does sound a lot like the Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane situation. Desperation for approval leading you to actually ignore your significant other's feelings or what, you know, they would like to do. Or even they're actually telling you, hey, I do not want to do this. And it's my birthday, and to celebrate my birthday, I don't want to do this. And you're like, yeah, cool, but I want to do this for your birthday because I think, yeah. Mr. Peanut Butter Diane thing, really, it seems familiar. So I know it is almost impossible to talk about Will Smith's downfall without mentioning Jada, and we will get to her, don't worry, we will get to her, but I think the groundwork was laid years ago. I think part of this mess with her might have been looking for a partner he kind of wants to put above him, like a mother figure, so that when he makes that partner who he's placed above him, when he makes her proud, it really validates him. That's kind of how it sounds. So the more interviews of Will that I watched, the clearer it became how important approval is to him. Not only through like his body language and persona and like how he talks, but also in what he directly says about it. He says this about approval. And not just anyone's approval, women's in particular, but not so much for the sake of the women themselves, more as an ego boost, it seems. Will speaks like gaining the love of a woman is the only thing which will validate you.
When I was 15 years old, my first girlfriend cheated on me.
Oh.
And I remember making a decision that nobody would ever cheat on me again. And the way I was going to do that is by being the biggest actor on earth.
Huh.
Right? So there's been this weird psychology that I've always felt like if my movies are number one, my life is going to work out great.
Huh.
You know? And like, oh, that's just
You
funny.
share that?
Yeah, given what then went on to happen, the irony in that statement is painful. This statement he makes is really important though, because the more clips I will go on to show of him talking, the more you'll see that this really is a fundamental philosophy for him and a driving force. that if his movies are number one, his life will work out great and he won't get hurt. And look, I think that's a very natural thing for humans. When we suffer some knock to our confidence or our sense of self or are made to feel not good enough, it's very easy to think of material things as the remedy and to use them as a self-defense mechanism. We even touched on this in my last video on Liz from the female side of things. The idea that making yourself as beautiful as possible will protect you from getting cheated on or hurt in a relationship, which of course is not how it works. The same is true for men, who might be more likely to see worldly success and material gain as the thing they just need to achieve in order to make themselves good enough and never be hurt again. Which does come from insecurity, that belief. I think it's always a dangerous thing to place your sense of worth as a person on something like beauty, money, or your career success. So to be clear, I am in no way saying that you shouldn't be proud of your achievements, or that you shouldn't strive for things, or even, take pride in your appearance, or enjoy taking care of yourself, or whatever, or be happy about your career or your success. I'm not saying any of those things. All I'm saying is when you can't also value yourself on who you are intrinsically, then you're putting your whole sense of identity on external things. And then what happens if you lose them? Like, what is the identity of a beautiful woman when she grows old? Who is she? If that's all you put your worth on and know yourself at, like, who are you then? Well, if that's gone, who's a rich man when he's no longer rich? If that's his whole identity, and who are you? What's the point of you if you're not that anymore? What is a movie star without movies? Will Smith without the adoration of the public? See, what Will just said, baked into that statement, is him acknowledging that he put the majority of his inner worth on his identity as, quote, the biggest actor on earth. He's saying that that's his worth, is his identity as a massively successful actor. In his mind, that was the way that he was absolutely going to make sure that he would never be cheated on again. To his credit, he achieved that level of success, and maybe it could be interpreted that that insecurity was a good thing because it drove him to succeed. I mean, you could argue that. But it didn't stop his wife choosing another man over him in the end. Back to square one, where he started. Because being the biggest actor on earth is irrelevant to how functional your personal relationships will be. It's also somewhat irrelevant to your worth as a person. Sure, it is something to be immensely proud of to achieve that level of success, and it shows your drive and your talent, and he should be proud of himself for that. But the movies and the wealth and the fame and the money shouldn't have become the thing that defined him and gave him his worth. They shouldn't be the only way in your mind that your life can work out great. They shouldn't be the only thing in your mind stopping your wife from cheating on you. Plenty of people never get anywhere near money and fame and still have wonderful lives. If Will Smith lost it all tomorrow, he'd still be Will Smith. He should still have enough confidence in who he is and in his identity to believe that he could have a relationship with somebody who valued him for him. And I think that was his mistake, which is easy to make at 15 years old. That's an easy and obvious thing for a kid to think, thinking that it's the external world that will solve your relationship or self-worth issues. Of course the external world factors into it, but the healthier path would probably have been him coming to terms with finding value in who he is, not what he does or what he has. So, that's where true self-worth comes from. Self-worth that's not reliant on how much money you make or which movies you're in. Still having self-worth even if you were Joe Nobody from down the street. And believing that you're enough for a woman to love and remain faithful to. And that's more than possible. The majority of human relationships are that. Not built on wealth or fame or the external, but on two people who really like each other. One could say love each other even, to think that you need to become a star to achieve something so basic and normal as a faithful relationship is wild. Genuinely wild. I know that sounds like a fairly innocuous statement from Will that I've just spent a long time talking about him being cheated on at 15 and that then driving him. But it is genuinely really crazy to believe that you need to be a huge movie star for women not to cheat on you and for your life to work out great. That is actually a crazy belief. It's a little bit dysfunctional, which, again, fair enough at 15 years old. Totally fair at 15. The problem is that Will doesn't seem to have matured much, if at all, out of that belief. I think that Will Smith is still that 15-year-old boy who wants mummy to be proud of him, in his own words. Also, something else I noticed about Will when he speaks, he's almost always smiling no matter what he's talking about, and always kind of sounds like he's performing. It also really looks like he's very aware of other people's reactions, and he's always watching to make sure that they're reacting well to what he's saying, and kind of, it seems like he's kind of shifting his behavior a little bit to like accommodate that or deal with that. I mean, this is very clear at the actors table talk because there are so many people there, so you can really see that with how much he's like looking around at people, adjusting, he's like trying to like, when someone else laughs, they laugh. Like you can see, because it's a round table, he's looking around constantly for other people's approval, is what I read it as, laughing immediately and loudly whenever someone else makes a joke or if they laugh. He seems hyper aware of like wanting to be liked and wanting that approval and just making sure that everyone's like, that he's been approved of, is how it felt to me. I mean, later we will get to him talking about how painful disapproval is for him. And that's clear from just watching clips like this, honestly. There really is something very childlike about Will Smith, in a way. The way that a kid is so like heavily influenced by a parent's, in his case a mother's, approval or disapproval. But this actors roundtable talk is not the only time he talks about being totally driven in life by women, or what women think of him, which really, and he himself even admits this, was never really about the women in the end, but about his ego and the validation he gets from impressing women, or other people seeing that he's cool enough to have a woman who's loyal to him or whatever. Will thinks that having money is enough to maintain a healthy relationship. Don't believe me? Let's hear it from him.
If there were an individual most poisonous aspect of our relationship in the past, is I felt that money and winning made a good relationship.
Yep.
We're succeeding in the world. That means our relationship is good. Not only did I not understand, I didn't care.
Will is very concerned with outward appearances and what people think of him, as we will go on to hear. If he looks like he's winning to the world, that means he must be, and that's enough, really. I don't want to say no matter what goes on behind closed doors, but that definitely seems to come second to what other people think, the image he's projecting.
I read something when we first got together that the most successful men in history have been married. For me, I knew that I would squander my life if I was running around.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way my mind works, I can only excel for a woman.
Women seem to be really deep as a driving force for Will, to the point that marriage was also a part of his success plan. Not for the sake of the marriage itself necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that obviously factored into it, but also very much as like this will help my career. And look, I don't think this is fundamentally wrong, him being, well, he said, quote, I can only excel for a woman. I mean, I think that's kind of a bit complicated and maybe nuanced. Like, I don't think this is fundamentally wrong. I'm not saying that. I think because humans, because we've discovered art and literature and spirituality and we're so smart with our big boy technology, that it could be easy to forget that we are animals. I think people can underestimate sometimes just how powerful that unconscious desire to reproduce can be. And I'm not saying that means that everyone wants kids or anything, or that everyone wants to go around having sex with everyone all the time. I'm not saying that. What I mean is just that the unconscious machinery pushing you to do things is probably the same machinery that pushed our ancestors to impress the opposite sex for the purposes of more humans. Even if you don't necessarily want kids yourself, I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying everyone wants kids or has to have kids, but a lot of our unconscious behaviours are probably connected to that on an unconscious evolutionary level in a way that we don't really realise, that might be driving us to do like unrelated things. So I think that does factor into it. But just to say, I'm also not on the side of things where people just think that we're all still just giant apes with no higher desires or ability to overcome our base instincts. I don't think that either. I think we're both. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to be a man driven by or inspired by women. I think that's pretty normal. I feel like when most guys pick up a guitar, sure, they love music, but there's also probably a little voice at the back of your mind saying, girls love musicians. So, like, I'm not saying that this is unique to Will or that there's something wrong with him or that he shouldn't be thinking like that, but I do think the extent to which it rules his life is a lot. Being driven to become one of the most successful actors in Hollywood by the girlfriend who cheated on you at 15 is a lot. I think Will is quite sensitive, actually, and that's not an insult. That's probably what makes him such a good performer. But it sounds like that event of 15 cut him really deeply and for a long time, to the point that it sounds like women have become the thing which, if he can just be successful enough to get one to love him, will mean he's finally worth something. That might well not have stemmed from that girlfriend. That might have been a deeper hurt that came from childhood, from a parent or something. So in this red table talk with Jada, this is a red table talk before the entanglement red table talk. This is a few years before that. But in this conversation, they go on to talk about how unhappy Jada was just at the point that their family were massively succeeding. So when their kids were becoming successful and Will had just built a gigantic house and everything seemed good, apparently Jada was not happy and she was crying every day.
I was failing miserably. But on the outside, I was winning. Like, I built a house and called the house her lake, right? And during that time, I remember saying, like, I built this house for you. I called it her lake. And she said, you built this house for you.
Yep.
And I was like, but it was devastating for me to accept that I built the house for me.
Yep. Yeah.
Because in my mind, I was saying I was building it for her, but I wasn't.
Yep. Yeah.
I wanted this house.
I will also add in here, this is why so much of the red pill advice is toxic for many reasons, but it's also toxic because the idea that you just need to get rich and all your issues with women will be a thing of the past if you're just like rich and successful. That's not how it works. Relationship skills can't be bought with money, and lots of rich people are very unhappy and also have dysfunctional relationships because they're using money to paper over the cracks.
Will was saying no all the way. Will, the house is too big. Will,
too
not
big,
this.
right?
No, Will, and he had a picture.
I had a picture, and I had a public perception
He had the public
that I
perception
wanted
that
to
he
project of
executed.
our relationship, of the family, and what my kids are, and what my wife is, and what we are in the world.
And this is one of the underlying things that I think would actually make being in a relationship with Will Smith very hard. And yes, Jada still seems like a nightmare. But as for Will, he's going to talk a lot about his picture. The picture he wants the world to see. The picture that's so important that he looks like the guy with the huge house. I mean, you could make so many overcompensating jokes there. I feel like that's been a long-lasting joke for a reason. I'm not making a sexual joke there, although people use it for that, you know, guy with a big car overcompensating for something. I'm not saying that, but just like for insecurity is kind of what I mean. Like that's become, I feel like, a stereotype for a reason. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with having a big house, but having a big house when your wife is saying, hey, I don't want this big house, it's too big, and it is too big, and he's just like, yeah, but I want people to see how big my house is. I mean, like that's the picture is very important to Will, and I think that is kind of revealing of those insecurities he seems to have had since he was a kid, and I think still not really let go of.
What I realized is I was building a picture.
Yep.
Yes.
I grew up in a household where I was scared and watched my father beat my mother up, right? So I was going to build the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's going to be Wonderland.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be happy all the time. Come on, Willow, let's play.
So it sounds like, though yes, on one level, he did it all for her, it's more to fit his picture. His childhood picture of what a perfect family looked like, when the image becomes more important than the reality. I don't think it's abnormal for children who grow up in unsafe environments to get really driven by a desire for approval in later life. To my understanding, it's actually a fairly common thing for children in unsafe homes or with an unsafe or toxic parent to grow up with be driven by a real desire for approval. And it makes sense. Approval or appeasing probably kept you safe. It sounds like it was very important for that part of him that was still a child to create an environment that was always happy and looked like the perfect family. And that's understandable. Unfortunately, it did seem like the idea of it mattered more. And if you think that's harsh, that I think the image mattered more to him than the actual family there, even his daughter says that.
That was around the time when Willow, I was so mad at you this day. When you put your hand on my face.
Oh, yeah.
And Willow, me and Jada are going through it. And Willow was like, oh, Daddy, it's so sad. And she's putting her hand on my face. She's like 9. And Jada was in the kitchen. And she's like, Mommy, isn't it sad? And Jada said, what? She said, Daddy has a picture of a family in his mind. And it's not us. I was like,
No, it was such deep. No. The thing is, it was such deep truth, but I was just seeing the obvious.
If you remember, Willow also released her first single at 9 years old, and Will was the driving force behind that. Well, at a certain point, Willow didn't want to do the touring and the singing anymore.
and she was like, okay, I'm done, Daddy. And I was like, sweetie, you can't be done. You know, you made a commitment. She was like, but I'm finished. I was like, oh, no, sweetie, but you can't be finished. You made a commitment to Mr. Jay-Z. He said, no, Daddy, you made a commitment to Mr. Jay-Z.
Wait, did I really say that?
Yes. You were like, Daddy, it doesn't matter that I'm done?
Ooh.
Yes, sweetie, it matters a lot. It does, but you can't be done.
But that didn't matter so much as the image Will had of what his perfect family should look like. He wanted Willow to be successful and to tour, so she was going to be successful and tour as a child.
She came down the next day and had shaved her head bald. Like, that was a deep protest.
Yep.
What it did for me is I had a crazy realization in that moment. I was building what I wanted for her. And she tried all of the different ways to say, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I was like, I get it. And I saw for the first time what Jada had been saying the whole time. The house was too big. It was always too many people here. She didn't want to have to travel the way we traveled. She didn't want all of her kids to be getting trolled on Twitter. Like,
that's kind of mental for your child to shave their hair because they don't want to keep performing the hair whip song. That's genuinely nuts. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely not in the psychological best interest of said child. That's pretty crazy.
I was much more conscious of public perception than Jada.
I mean, I think Jada could probably do with being a little bit more conscious of public perception for your well-being, Will. But I take your point. Like I've said, like I'll go on to say, Will Smith, very, very keen on public perception and his image.
Because I had been divorced before, I wasn't getting divorced again.
Right.
Okay.
So what's interesting is earlier on in this conversation as well, Will said the same thing about his ex-wife, even when he knew that his ex-wife wasn't the one he was meant to be with. And I think he knew he wasn't in love with his ex-wife, and he knew that he wanted to be with Jada, but he'd never divorce her. He said he'd never leave her because he said the same thing about that. It took his ex-wife leaving him, but even when his ex-wife went to him and said, I want a divorce, he was still like, no, this is not happening, we're not having, even though he also didn't want to be married to her. It seems like this picture of success and a loving family and a wife is super important to Will, maybe more than the reality of it. There was like, divorce was not on the table for him with his ex-wife until she like forced the issue, even when he was in love with someone else and didn't want to be married to her. And then with Jada as well, it's like divorce, he says, that's interesting what he says as well. He doesn't say, I was so in love with you and so wanted to be with you that divorce wasn't an option. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, I couldn't live without you, that's why divorce wasn't an option. I wanted to work through it, that's why divorce was an option. He says, because I'd been divorced before, divorce wasn't an option. Interesting. I feel like there are better reasons to maybe stay married to someone than that. Like I said, I think the picture matters to Will. It matters.
The fact that I was broken and I learned how to look fixed to the world.
Right.
Will Smith is a character, right? But deep down inside, I was an insecure little boy that wanted Jada to say I was great, right? And if she didn't say I was great, the dragon came out.
Yeah.
He's really just straight up saying here that so much of who he was a performance. Will Smith is a character. It sounds like that everything he was doing was not for her, but for her to be proud of him. And those are different things. And then by extension, the world would be proud of him. Like a kid doing skateboarding tricks and wanting his mum to see. Like if he could just impress her enough, then he would know he was worthy and the world would know he was worthy. It is a weird dynamic. It's a weird dynamic how he talks about Jada. And yeah, their marriage is weird. But I guess my point here is that though yes, like I said, Jada seems fairly abysmal as a partner, I'm not sure Will would be free of difficulties with women even if he'd married someone else. He speaks like he is still chasing mummy's approval, to the point he literally said that and referred to his wife as mummy and he wanted to be a good boy. Weird. But I think that's being underlying his career and is also underlying his behaviour right now. It also makes more sense of why he portrayed himself as tiny in his music video about pretty girls. Like he can't stop feeling like an insecure kid next to these giant, all-powerful and judgmental mothers.
He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy!
I think being a good boy is so important to Will. He wants everyone to say he's doing a good job. I wonder if that's the problem with fame. It can too easily be used to fill gaps. Like everyone has issues, right? Some more than others, sure, but a lot of people have ways they feel they weren't fulfilled in childhood that can leave those gaps. Dealing with those gaps is tough and painful, and so a lot of people use addictions to cope and to fill it up. Addictions can come in many forms: alcohol, drugs, porn, TV, food, work, or even fame. Maybe the adoration of the public can compensate for the praise of a parent. Maybe it does fulfill that childhood need of just wanting to be told you're doing such a good job, of having someone be proud of you. And I think most people know that feeling of being a kid, you know, and shouting, Mum, 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 watch this, whenever you do something new, or when you draw a picture and you want to show it to her so she can say it's good and that she's proud of you. It's a very fundamental drive. Even if you haven't had a good mum, you likely still experienced that urge for her approval when you were young, which is probably like a really bad thing if she was a bad, toxic parent. I think something that's made Will Smith so endearing, especially when he was younger, is he did and does have this childlike enthusiasm and desire to entertain you. Like I said, he kind of reminds me of a kid who's so excited to show off some new tricks that they learnt on the skateboard. Like, he really gives me that vibe. But with entertainment, like, that was the slightly goofy, charming charisma of Will Smith, especially on something like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He had that childlike energy of this kid who just wants to share their joy with you, who wants to impress you and entertain you with such a guileless innocence that you also really want to be entertained and impressed by him, like you would this adorable kid who's like, hey, look what I can do, and you want to be like, wow. That's how it kind of feels. Just like you would an enthusiastic kid who's joyfully showing you all the things he's learnt. You want to clap for him. And you can see how Will Smith has thrived and blossomed under the praise and adoration of the public. Like how a kid glows when a parent looks at what they've achieved and says like, wow, you're amazing, you did such a good job. On the other side of things, what happens when that praise turns to disapproval? When the parent is telling you off and you're ashamed and you know that you did a bad thing. When you go from glowing golden child to a very naughty boy who has to sit on the naughty step and make a public apology for hitting someone for no real reason. We don't hit people, William. Well, the kid might get angry or upset or desperately try to win back the parents' approval with a cringy PR tour and a bad pop song. I'm being facetious, but in all seriousness, Will Smith hates disappointing people and being on the other end of disapproval, and it does make him seem like a naughty child trying desperately to win back an angry parent's approval.
Disappointing people is my central trauma. I hate when I let people down. So it hurts. It hurts me psychologically and emotionally to know I didn't live up to people's image and impression of me. The work I'm trying to do is I am deeply remorseful. And I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself, right? I'm human and I made a mistake.
I think his wording is very interesting here. He is still talking about his image, about not living up to people's image of him. That's what hurts him. It's a very interesting and I think accidental admission. He only briefly mentions Chris. And in my opinion, look, what I honestly do not believe that he was sorry or is sorry now for hitting Chris. I think he never has been and still isn't. I genuinely believe that Will thinks he was justified. I think he just says it because of the backlash and he knows he kind of has to. So he's kind of got to be like, sorry, Chris. But when he talks about like what really hurts him, what really hurts Will is the disappointment, is breaking the image that he has built, is not being seen as a good boy anymore. And why do I think that? Why do I believe that? Well, how he behaved at the time and afterwards, and some recent things he said as well, have really displayed, in many people's opinions, his actual lack of remorse towards Chris, and his emotional immaturity. The fact he's still a little boy, pretending to be a man, still. I think at the moment that we are watching somebody spiral because the image he built and desperately wanted the public to believe that he was the man, you know, with a great family and a loyal wife. That image he wanted everyone to believe has crumbled. No one believes that anymore. And now the hurt 15-year-old boy seems to have come out again. The kid who sincerely believed he could avoid being humiliated if he protected himself with all the wealth and fame in the world. Who just thought if he was well behaved and made mummy proud, whatever that means, everything would turn out okay. And that's got to be pretty devastating. I imagine that would be very psychologically devastating. Realising that everything you have dedicated your life to, while impressive, never solved the problem that it was intended to solve. That is, to make the inner 15-year-old boy feel worthy. Imagine becoming a famous movie star so that a woman could never make you feel unworthy again, only for that same situation to happen, but 10 times worse, and for her to publicly emasculate and shame you, and for your adoring public to mock you for it. That's his teenage trauma repeated on steroids. The powerless 15-year-old kid not feeling like a man because his girlfriend left him, on top of a childhood where I'm assuming his violent father probably made him feel pretty powerless to stop what was going on, and now he's an adult, and again, the public, or Jada, or both, have made him feel pretty powerless and not like a man. Like that kid again. So I can only imagine that would feel like it validated the underlying insecurities that he's had all his life. Not fun. Psychologically, yeah, devastating. I don't think that's an understatement. And I think that's why he's crashing out right now. Everything he does seems like a huge cope, more to himself than the public, to be honest. Like he's trying to pretend to everyone and himself that he's still cool and respected and on top of his game, and like everything's still fine and happy, and like the family picture's still fine, like he said, everything's good. Which is not the case. And everyone knows it's not the case and can see it's not the case. And no one believes him. The happy Every time I see Will Smith, he looks like he's trying not to cry. He didn't used to seem like that. Now, when I see him in interviews and he's got this kind of... it feels so forced, this forced positivity, like he can't let that go. The image, he's got to be happy. That's why it feels like a lie, and it feels inauthentic. And I feel like if he just got rid of that... I'll go on to talk about this later, but I just want to say this now while I remember. If he just got rid of that forced positivity and just allowed some of that, maybe sadness or like regret, to like really come through and be seen rather than this forced positivity, I think the public would react so much differently and would really like him and warm to him. It feels fake. It's why that comes across as cringe and people don't like it. He looks like he's gonna cry every time I see him. He never used to seem like that. Like, I don't believe the happy act anymore. Yeah, anyway. But at that point in your life, when everything comes crashing down and this image you had shatters and you're, you know, the picture you wanted the world to believe is gone, and everything you devoted your life to in order for something to not happen again happens again on a bigger, more humiliating scale than it did when you were a teenager. At that point in your life, I think you have a choice. Realise that external approval was never the solution. Face all your insecurities that you spent your whole life trying to ignore and paper over. Really look at yourself and come out the other side a lot wiser and more mature. To finally be able to stop acting like, in Will's own words, that insecure little boy. The other option is, go on as you always have. Use fame and the idea of a perfect image to try and cover up all the hurt and the mess that you're feeling inside. Refuse to accept or admit that there are problems in your relationship or in this perfect image that you've created, or that you were taken for a ride from someone you believed was always there for you, or that maybe you're not all happy all the time, and show some humility for the mess that you made. Really, truly believe that you're good enough and come to terms with that without trying to unconvincingly convince the public that you're good enough. The definition of madness, some say, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The one thing I wouldn't do if I was Will Smith is, well, I suppose it's easy to say that, but that I would advise him not to do. One thing I wouldn't do is try to rebrand one of your most public fuck-ups as a hero moment for yourself. And here we come to the interview I saw that prompted me to do this video. It's a recent interview. So, in the interview I will go on to show, I'm convinced that Will is still primarily driven by the fear of the public's disapproval, rather than any real growth. I think this interview was him trying to convince the public that he's grown so we can all tell him how wonderful he is, rather than actually doing any growing. I do think it's crazy that all these years later, Will can't just be genuinely sorry. Or at least that's what it looks like. This is where the egotistical movie star comes out, and I go from feeling sorry for him to being really fucking irritated by him. There is no humility in how he talks about the slap. Even when he's trying to be deep about it and acknowledging like that it was a mistake, he still doesn't sound humble. There are a few things that annoy me more than people using ridiculous pseudo-spiritual word salad to avoid taking accountability for their bad behaviours, or when they're like trying to rebrand a bad behaviour as some great empowering moment. Celebrities in general are very prone to doing this, probably because they're all surrounded by yes men and they're hardly ever faced with the consequences of their actions, and everyone is always screaming their name and telling them how amazing and wonderful and beautiful and the best they are. And they think their farts smell like rainbows. Probably that's why. That's probably why they're prone to this. But listen to how much Will talks about himself when discussing how he publicly humiliated and assaulted someone else on stage. So this recent interview was by the BBC, I think, and is titled, Will Smith Talks New Music and Lessons After the Oscars. So Will goes on to talk about his song, Beautiful Scars, and here we see the beginnings of rebranding his everything that happened as some noble moment.
That was the whole point of titling those songs the way that those songs were titled, you know, and it is, you know, it wasn't physical scars for me, but it was, you know, emotional and psychological scars.
Might have been physical scars for Chris though, if you'd hit a bit harder. Yeah? But who cares about Chris? This isn't about Chris. This is about Will and his journey and his pain and his scars. Not physical, because nothing happened to him physically, remember. Emotional and psychological, which is what, like, Chris only had physical, so emotional and psychological, he's the real victim here. Yeah, so it's about that. It's about his pain, his scars, psychological and emotional, and interviewers once again coddling him and adding to his own sense of self-importance and the fact he didn't do anything wrong. This is what fame does to you. It rots your brain and makes you think you're the centre of the universe even when you are no longer relevant. You know what, Will? Do you know what would happen if the public stopped paying attention to you? You'd be fine. you'd survive. And you might finally be happy and learn to rely on yourself for validation rather than women or the public.
And over the past few years, having to learn how to accept that that is a part of the beauty and the power that you cultivate, that you wear your scars, you know, almost the way, you know, Jesus wore his scars. That's the concept of beautiful scars, that your power and your beauty comes from having survived and alchemized that scar into all that you are.
Will is a survivor, you guys. He survived the Oscars. So powerful and so beautiful. And now he's so enlightened. He wears his scars the way that Jesus did. Yeah, he slapped someone in the face, but that led to him being like Jesus and being powerful and beautiful, and it's led him to enlightenment. So really, Jesus would have wanted him to slap Chris Rock in the face. Isn't that what Jesus said? Go around slapping people in the face? I am sure that's a Bible verse. I know there's a Bible verse about slapping. I'm sure Jesus said that. Oh right, yeah, here it is. You've heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. Oh, well, I guess Chris was the one who actually turned the other cheek, not Will. But continue, O great Messiah, bestow us with your wisdom.
The scar begins to teach, and that's a part of the real beauty of accepting the difficulties, accepting the adversities, accepting the tragedies and traumas, and recognizing that, like, the power of being human is you get to decide what it is.
Exactly.
You get to decide how it affects you and then how it affects others. It's hard to hear when you're in the middle of something, but there's literally nothing that could happen that you can't make beautiful.
Now I know where Jaden gets the pseudo-philosophizing bullshit from. The scar is the teacher. He was scarred from the consequences of his actions, and now he gets to decide how it affects people. Chris is angry and humiliated. No, he isn't. Will has made the whole situation beautiful, and he gets to decide how it affects him and others. So yeah, everything Will just says, and everything he will go on to say in this interview, it doesn't mean anything. It is more LA garbage, pseudo-spiritual nonsense to dodge accountability. This is like the video I did on cheating Chelsea, who made infidelity sound like a spiritual revelation. And actually, Chelsea and Jada have a lot in common, and they talk about betraying your spouse and how perfect and blameless they are in a very similar way. Yeah, everything Will is saying is word salad, meaningless rubbish. If someone is spewing word vomit like this at you, ask them to simplify what they mean, what they're actually saying. To simplify what they're actually saying without all the fancy, meaningless ramblings. And if they can't do it, then they are not actually saying anything, and it is all smoke and mirrors to make themselves sound deep and intelligent. Now Will is doing it.
The last few years for me have been really deep reflection. Yeah. You know, after the Oscars, I like shut it down for a minute and like really went into the internal work. And just taking a big, strong, honest look at myself.
Oh, he was taking a big, strong, honest look at himself after years of deep reflection. Was the mocking rap seemingly aimed at Chris, where you imply that you did nothing wrong? Was that the outcome of your years of deep reflection and being honest with yourself, William? I don't think he sounds much different than he did around the time it happened, when he was still not taking accountability and playing the victim. I'm watching an identity crisis. One moment, Will is trying to pretend that he's a tough guy who won't stand for disrespect, and the next, he is comparing himself to Jesus and talking about deeply transformational spiritual moments. So take this recent freestyle rap he did, where not only did he rhyme stage with stage 3 times, but he also seemed to be referencing the Oscar slap. So I'm not going to play this freestyle because I don't want to get copyright struck, but I'm going to quote it. I'm going to quote what he said in this freestyle rap, and it sounded bad, but here we go. If you talking crazy out your face up on the stage and disrespect me on the stage, expect me on the stage. Jokers dish it out, cry foul when it's time to take it. City full of real ones, wasn't raised to fake it. Jokers dish it out, cry foul when it's time to take it. I beg your pardon, Will. Is that how you guys remember it? Because from what I remember, it wasn't Chris Rock who cried like a baby afterwards. He took the hit like a champ, actually. You were the one who cried when you accepted an award and got a standing ovation from the rest of the morally bankrupt celebrities after having a temper tantrum over a blow to your ego, from what I remember. His Oscars acceptance speech as well was just him justifying his actions.
In this business, you got to be able to have people disrespecting you. And you gotta smile and you gotta pretend like that's okay.
Oh, boo-hoo. And and normal people also get that and get disrespected, but without the servants and the $1 million payouts.
But love will make you do crazy things.
Was it love? Was it love or was it your ego? Stop trying to justify it. Again, he has to sound, so in that, he's made himself both the victim and noble. If you heard that, did you realise how he did that? He was like, oh, I'm the victim because people get to disrespect me and I just got to pretend it's okay. So he's the victim. And then he also makes himself the hero at the same time. So he's victim and hero because he's also like, I did it for love. Love will make you do crazy things. What a hero. Then he apologised, but then he did this freestyle rap where he seems, I guess we don't know for sure he's talking about Chris Rock, but who else is he talking about? Talking disrespect on the stage, then expect me on the stage. Which, I mean, the rhyme is terrible, but I mean, obviously people he knows, like, obviously people are going to know what that means. Why would you do that, Will? Why did you do that, William? Why would you do that freestyle rap? I thought you said you were sorry for your behaviour. Not at the time. A while afterwards, you said you apologised to Chris and you talk about how it was a mistake and you regret it. Do you? 'Cause after a freestyle rap of like how tough you are and people got to expect you on the stage, if they disrespect you on the stage, if they're talking crazy out their face up on the stage, this cancels that out. That rap cancels out his apologies and makes him look so deeply inauthentic. Mostly because we all know that him acting like a hard man who doesn't stand for disrespect is a facade. Will, you let your wife interview you about her sleeping with another man? You take all the disrespect, okay? Let's not pretend. And can we not reframe what you did as a tough guy act? You sucker punched, not even punched, you sucker slapped the smaller Chris Rock when he wasn't expecting it, walked away before he could retaliate, and in an environment where he couldn't retaliate because he's on the world stage, literally in front of everyone watching, and then sobbed afterwards. And now you're trying to rebrand it like you're some hard rapper. Pathetic. No one is scared of you, William. But that's the thing. It seems like Will is more focused still on the external world and the approval of others more than he is his actual growth. And this is one of the problems with fame, like I said. I think it can function as a way to stop people from growing. Not always, not everyone, I'm not saying all celebrities are like this, but it can, which is why it's, especially if you're like insecure or you've not dealt with stuff or you're using fame to, it can become a monster. I think it can stop people from growing. Like, why would they need to develop themselves or check their ego if they live in a distorted reality where they have everything they want and everyone is always paying them attention and telling them they're brilliant? You never have to work on yourself because your connections with people become abnormal. You can be a dickhead or wrong and people will still want to be around you. I don't think fame like gives you new issues so much as it like magnifies what is already there. And I think that problem can be especially bad for those who get famous when they're young, when they're still figuring out who they are, or if they have previous issues that they're like not dealing with. And it sounds like image and this projection of a perfect life has been very important to Will ever since he was a kid. So I guess as an example of fame just being the thing that just never holds you accountable, at the time, years ago, like back near when this happened, when the Oscar slap happened, soon after this, spineless Trevor Noah brought Will on to justify his actions, brought Will on his show to justify his actions, because Hollywood has all got to surround him and coddle him, their special precious star. I say justify his actions. He didn't bring on Will to justify his actions. He brought on Will to try and make everything okay and better for him and tell him that he wasn't wrong, really. This is how celebrities get out of touch with reality. If anyone else at a normal job was at some fancy event for that job and they got on stage and slapped someone, they would probably be fired at the very least. It's unlikely their actions would be excused or they would be aided in playing the victim. Instead of actually being challenged, Trevor Noah asks Will about his journey. Oh, his journey, what's your journey? Oh, Will, what's your journey? Since that day that you hit someone in the face, you didn't say that. What's your journey been since that day, Will? They are also fucking pretentious.
What has the journey been like since that day? Like, what has it been like for you?
Yeah, that was a horrific night, as you can imagine. You know, there's many nuances and complexities to it, you know, but at the end of the day, I lost it. You just never know what somebody's going through. Somebody's mother died last week, you know? Somebody's child is sick, you know? Somebody just lost their job. Somebody just found out their spouse cheated, you know? I was going through something that night, you know? And not that you know, justifies my behavior at all. I would just say, you know, you're asking what did I learn? And it's that we just got to be nice to each other, man. You know, it's like, it's hard.
Oh, Will is going to lecture us on being nice to each other. Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Oh, thank you, oh great one. Oh, for bestowing this great heavenly gift of divine enlightenment, really, inspiration, we could call it, from the gods themselves. I mean, who else could have come up with something like, we just need to be nice to each other? You know, you really got to think about it and think about what someone's going through. You should never get on stage and make mild jokes at the expense of privileged multimillionaires at an event where jokes are expected, because you don't know what they're going through and how hard their lives are, and that's not kind. It's not, their fragile egos just can't take it, and it's not kind. You should think twice. You should think, if you're a comedian and you're at an event where it is expected that you make jokes at the expense of the people there, well, you should think twice. You should think twice about that, because that's big mean, especially if those people are privileged multimillionaires and they're famous and celebrities, because their lives are so difficult and you never know what they're going through. You know, so you just got to be nice, got to be kind. I also can't stand the fact that after Will makes this groundbreaking statement about being kind, he just sort of looks around to the audience as if he's expecting applause. So this is the point in life, William, where meaningless platitudes no longer work. I hate this aspect of celebrity where they act like gurus for saying the same things that kindergarten teachers say and acting like it's some fucking enlightened breakthrough, meanwhile living the exact opposite. Oh, play nicely, be nice, be kind. We just got to be nice to each other. He literally just said something that you would say to a 5-year-old. And then like he wants applause for it. So he hits someone in the face, then goes to preach to all us about, you've really got to be kind and think about what you do to people and things, and you just got to be nice to each other. You are damn lucky it wasn't Ricky Gervais there that night. Oh, you don't know how lucky you are. I wish it was him that roasted you. You would absolutely deserve it. This is why the public is sick of Hollywood. Do you know how many people get mocked without getting paid millions for the privilege? And they can't just act out and hit someone with, like, no consequences or hardly any consequences. Oh, yeah, the Oscars, after Backlash, had to be like, oh, you're banned from the Oscars. Oh, sorry, banned from the Oscars. Oh, my God, what a travesty. Oh, boo-hoo, Crimey River, you can no longer attend the Oscars for however many years. Oh, my God. You're right, that is terrible. Imagine not being able to attend the Oscars. Imagine consequences so, like, harsh like that you can no longer attend the Oscars. My heart weeps for him. Jada also dealt with it badly by looking pissy. Even if you didn't like the joke, Jada, you know that you're on camera. You know that celebrities get roasted and that is expected. Just pretend to be a good sport and laugh along. And then bitch about how much you hate him and how rude he was when you're at home with your husband afterwards. Like, that's what you should have done. Imagine how differently that would have been received if she'd just been like, yeah, I'm G.I. Jane. I'm a badass. For anyone who didn't know, that was the joke was he said Jada looked like G.I. Jane because she was bald. Yeah. Anyway, but imagine the different reaction if she'd be like, yeah, I'm a badass, I'm G.I. Jane. When celebrities take themselves so seriously, the public hate it because it's interpreted as you acting like you're above us. Which, let's be real, that's exactly what Jada thinks. She has no respect for anyone but herself. I mean, the entertainment industry is so fucking transparent. Will was clearly brought on The Daily Show, in my opinion, as some bullshit puff piece PR move to try and smooth it over. Did your agents discuss the details and the questions and how you would spin this beforehand with The Daily Show, Will? Did they all get together and be like, how can we make Will's image better? Oh, what's the angle? Did they do that? I don't know, maybe, I'm not saying it, I'm not claiming anything, I'm just, just throwing out ideas. I'm saying maybe did that happen? I'm asking questions. God. And spineless Trevor Noah as well. Sold himself out to ask soft questions. Never challenging Will. No, not asking him an actual tough question or even asking for an apology, because he's not there to do that. He is there to make celebrities look good. The problem is, Will Smith hasn't taken any real or believable accountability for what he did because he doesn't have to. Hollywood just comes around to coddle him, and he's happy to let them because he's desperate for approval and praise, which is what he got from Trevor Noah. He just plays the victim this entire interview and is set up to do so by Trevor Noah, who aids him in this display of, oh, so sad, oh, Will's the victim, oh, Will didn't do anything wrong, oh, so sad.
People have said some shitty things about you and your family.
Absolutely.
You're a human being. It felt like, and I would say this to people, I was like, it's becoming relentlessly shitty now. And people think it's okay.
Yes.
That's the thing, people think it's okay. And not Chris, by the way. I'm talking about people, the internet, etc. But it felt like this was Will Smith for the first time going, okay, is this how you want me to respond or not?
Okay, so because some people on the internet said some shitty things about Will Smith, which, by the way, they say about every celebrity or anyone in the public eye. So some people on the internet said some mean things about Will Smith, and that hurt his feelings. So because of that, he punched Chris Rock in the face. Is that what you're justifying, Trevor? And no, I don't think that's how people wanted him to respond. I think people were urging him to leave Jada and stop allowing her to disrespect him. I don't think anyone wanted him to slap a comedian for making a harmless joke. It's just a shame that Jada's vanity couldn't handle it. I wish Ricky Gervais would have roasted you. I wish he would have. Like, it's just, shut up, Trevor. He's so annoying. No one wanted him to respond to anything like that. They wanted him to stand up to his wife, and everyone knows it, and Trevor knows it as well. It's such a bitch move from Trevor. Sorry, it's so transparent as well. Oh, people have been being mean to you for ages, and you're a human being. Of course you snapped and hit someone. See, guys, Will is human just like you, and I'm going to use the fact that some people somewhere said some mean things about him on the internet to justify him hitting someone else in the face. And he's human. He's a human being. Will's a human being just like you. Will has consistently done this since the slap. Used the I'm a human being defense constantly. And make no mistake, that is not, it's not an excuse. It's an accountability dodge. Imagine if like people would use that as a defense for anything they do. I'm going to do that. Whenever I do something bad to someone, I'm just going to say I'm a human being. Could I do that? Can I go around like stealing things from people on the street or hitting them in the face? And then if I get caught, I can say, well, I'm a human being. Not perfect. Can't expect us to be perfect. How dare you expect me to be perfect? I'm a human being. Oh God, leave me alone. I'm a human being. Make no mistake. That is an accountability dodge. Saying I'm a human being is an accountability dodge. The subtext that Will Smith and the people defending him are too cowardly to come out and say, but are hoping that people will pick up on, is Will did what anyone would do. Can we even say what he did was wrong because he's a human being? All human beings make oopsies like this. And that's true. Human beings, we do fuck up. We do. Humans murder, lie, cheat, steal. It is human to do all sorts of nasty things. On the scale of nasty things, what Will did isn't even the worst thing. Not by far. But it's still a nasty thing. And when people do nasty things, even if it's not an abnormal occurrence in humanity, that doesn't mean that they don't accept full responsibility. That doesn't mean they act like they did it because they're human and they don't really have another choice. Is that a defense? Can we start using that? Can murderers start using that? Because it is, you know what is a really human thing to do? Murder is like a really human thing. It's so human. Yeah, but we can be better than that, is the response. And I'm not saying it's like murder. I'm just saying you get the logic. People understand my logic, taken to its logical conclusion. I'm talking about the argument, not comparing the two things. Thank you.
It was a lot of things. It was the little boy that watched his father beat up his mother. You know, it's all of that just bubbled up.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Will, you're middle-aged. I feel like it's kind of a gross deflection actually to use that as an excuse, and it's also my opinion that this was an intentional decision made beforehand that he would mention this. I think it's emotional blackmail and trying to guilt the public into letting it go. You're not a little boy anymore. Well, you have had decades to learn not to act out and not to hit people, regardless of the home you grew up in. You've had decades to move past that, okay? How about a sincere apology? And the thing is, look, I'm not saying that there's no place for you to talk about your past traumas that led to bad behaviours. Of course you can do that. There is a space for that. I think he could talk about that if he liked, because I think his past probably did play into it quite a lot. I think his father probably did play into it quite a lot. But that comes after genuine remorse and after enough time has passed that it doesn't seem like an excuse. That comes after soul searching and while you're not trying to use it as a deflection or an excuse while not seeming like you're sorry because you're not a little boy anymore. And yeah, that sucks, but you can't be like, oh, well, I hit someone as a grown man, but did you know that my dad used to hit my mum when I was a kid? It's like, okay, but you're an adult now, aren't you? You can't just use that as an excuse. You still did a bad thing. Be remorseful, then afterwards you can talk about the stuff that led you there and then, But that just seems like you're playing the victim and trying to deflect. It does. It seems like you're playing the victim and trying to deflect from what you did. When you've done that, when you've shown genuine remorse and the soul searching, then you get to talk about how you were suffering and how you got to that point. Then you get to do that. It's not good to do it when you're trying to smooth things over in an apology, but I think that just shows his ego that he didn't really think he did anything wrong and he still thinks of himself as kind of the victim in that. I really do think that.
I also think that's not who you are. I'll be honest with you. I think it's not who you are. I think everybody can make a mistake. Mm-hmm. And I think in my honest opinion...
Pathetic. Softest PR interview. Probably pre-prepared. Was it a mistake though? Was it a mistake? Did you accidentally trip and fall on the stage and whack Chris Rock in the face and then accidentally shout at him afterwards? Was it an accident, a mistake? Oh. Anyway, I will get back to the recent interview, the more recent one, and move away from the Trevor Noah thing, but I just wanted to show that this really is a pattern with Will, and in how he's pretty much consistently spoken and acted about the slap since it happened. He did kind of apologise, he did an apology kind of after that, like, said sorry to Chris really briefly, but apart from that, like, blip, pretty consistently since it happened, he's often been deflecting or trying to show himself as the victim or the hero in the situation, like, yeah. It's been pretty consistent, and I think it's a pattern with Will and a lot of celebrities that in their own worlds they're so surrounded by yes men who let them dodge accountability that it's no wonder they end up with huge egos.
So there's a song in the video. It starts with me in the therapist's office, and I'm talking about, it's been a problem ever since I was a little boy, and I've struggled with it my whole life. And the therapist says, well, how would you define this problem? And it's like, I like pretty girls, right? So it's like the funny version of the idea. So I went totally left all the way back to comedy for this record. So it's bright colors and all of that, and it's summer and all, but it is, meant to be a fun way for me to express what goes on in the madness of my head.
Oh, really mad there, Will. Madness. You like pretty girls? Oh, unheard of. You're unhinged, man. The madness. Oh my God, you're so quirky. He's quirky. He's so quirky cool. He's so quirky and cool. Oh my God, he likes pretty girls. Madness crazy. Yeah, but this is just another example, the Pretty Girls song, and him thinking it was like the most like comedic, creative, funny thing. That's just another example of yes men telling celebrities that they're creative geniuses all the time. Someone should have told him that it was a bad idea, that it's not funny, it's not comedy, it's not good in any way, and he comes across washed up and out of touch, and he shouldn't have done it.
It was like there was a manhole cover over some unexplored areas, and like the manhole cover came off, and it was, scary for a minute what was in there, but then all of a sudden, all of these new thoughts and new energies and new creativity came through like a geyser, and it just started showing up as music. It started showing up as songs. It started showing up as new creativity.
Don't worry how Chris feels. The important thing is that the Oscars debacle has made Will more creative. Is this what toxic positivity looks like? Optimism so strong you're unable to just be like, yeah, that was shit. What I did was shit. I'm sorry, it was a bad thing. Or is this just ego? If you talk about it like this, do you never have to admit that you did anything wrong? Because you're convincing yourself that that was what unlocked new creativity. So therefore you didn't do anything wrong because it was like essential to new creativity. Is that an ego trick? Is that what it was? What creativity was that then, Will? What geyser, gushing manhole cover of wonderful new energies and creativity was that? What was that? Was that the terrible London performance with Rita Ora that was just embarrassing beyond belief? Was that the creativity? How about the cringy I Like Pretty Girls song? Was that this amazing like geyser, whoa, wow, whoa, so new, so cutting edge creativity? Was that it? In this interview, Will still cannot just grow up and accept any real accountability for what he did to Chris Rock, even years after the fact. He speaks about the moment he physically attacked someone in front of the world as if it was some inciting incident in the great hero arc of Will Smith, where he is somehow both victim and saviour in this new narrative. To hear Will tell it, it sounds like Chris Rock wasn't even there. Everything that happened was all about Will. It was all about Will. All of it happened to test and grow and help Will. Chris Rock, nothing more than an unnamed extra in the epic tale that is Will Smith's life. His feelings and growth and experience totally irrelevant because he's not the main character. And when I say unnamed, I mean it. I don't even think Will mentions Chris by name when talking about this in this interview. And why would he? Why would he really? Chris was merely a prop to push Will along his great journey of discovery and revelation into being an even better person than he already was. Yeah. He's even invented a new word to describe this, because of course no words in the English language were brilliant enough to describe the transcendental experience of slapping a comedian over a G.I. Jane joke. It was brutal. Wow, yeah. Brutal and beautiful. Yes, I am quoting Will Smith directly. And yes, he really is that far up his own arse. What a poet. A beautiful soul. Not just a Will Smith, he's a wordsmith. Huh? Sorry.
I feel like I'm brand new. I feel like the greatest creative period of my life will be in the next 5 to 10 years. I feel like I'm a better actor than I've ever been. I feel like I'm a better musician, and I'm trying to take some of that space back to develop myself as a poet and a musical artist. But I'm really excited about what this next phase is going to be. I'm like, I feel artistically more equipped to connect with human hearts than ever.
I like how we started with talking about how he took a long, hard look at himself for behaving badly and ended with a speech about how amazingly creative and talented and able to connect with human hearts he is. This is not what humility looks like.
And can I ask, is that as a result of the Oscar movie?
Absolutely, totally a result. That beautiful scars.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, being forced into a place where I had to be still. And really, for the first time in my career, having to deal with a level of disapproval that I never had to experience.
I still don't think Will has at all come to terms with disapproval. He's spoken at length about his lifelong struggle with desperately needing the approval of others, and his recent behaviour seems more attention-grasping and desperate for the love he's lost than ever. I think he still finds it excruciatingly painful to be faced with disapproval, and the fact this disapproval over the Oscars has never really gone away has led to this ridiculous new attempt at relevance and approval. I think this is cope. I was going to say that he's doing this strategy because the apologies didn't work at gaining back his reputation, but I'm not sure he's ever tried the route of sincere humility and a genuine apology. It was like a quick I apologise to Chris that was brushed over, and then he was into like how sorry he was to everyone else except Chris, and for his image and for like letting people down, and that he wasn't, you know, people thought he wasn't this image and he shattered the image or whatever. And it took him ages to actually apologise to Chris as well. He didn't mention him in his like earliest, well, not his Oscar speech for sure, when he was apologising to everyone. He finally did in the video, just a quick I apologise to Chris, and then it's on to, you know, everything else. But honestly, I think that's because he really thinks that he didn't do anything wrong. Or at least maybe he does, but like I think he thinks Chris deserved it, but he feels sorry for like embarrassing maybe his family, or like, you know, I think that's maybe what he feels like he did wrong, but I don't think he feels bad for Chris. From how he talks about it, I think he still feels disrespected by Chris, angry and justifying what he did. Like, it would be a lot easier, Will, if you would just like admit to yourself that Jada is the one that you're angry at and deserves your ire for disrespecting you. I still think his ego is getting in the way of him being sorry. So much of it seems that he'd rather create a whole hero narrative around a dark night of the soul and comparisons to Jesus while he's selling his new album, rather than to just say, I did a shitty thing. And I'm sorry, Chris. I embarrassed you in front of the world, but really it's me who should be embarrassed. My ego was hurt by what you said, and like a child, I acted out when I should have known better. That must have been really hard for you to experience, and you dealt with it with more grace than I deserved. He's not, like, he should, like, that. He should just say that when he talks about it. Just say that. I think his pride and displaced hurt towards Chris is preventing him from saying that. So I think he gave a very half-hearted attempt at the being sorry path. Not that I think he ever was truly sorry. I think he felt he had to apologise, like I said, because of the backlash. But I've not felt much humility from him. On Trevor Noah, it was all coddling and excuses and playing the victim. And then in his brush-off apology to Chris, it still didn't seem genuine. But anyway, so after the half-hearted attempt didn't really work at winning back public approval and respect, he's now seemed to have turned to a new strategy of trying to play the hard man and pretending what he did to Chris was a tough guy thing to do. Simultaneously doing that, a tough guy thing, but also then a spiritually enlightening thing at other points. Either way, how he talks has nothing to do with Chris, and it's just like all about Will.
What does making a mistake in front of the world, how do you handle that? I guess making, you know, something that you feel changed your life in front of the world,
Yes.
what pressure does that put on?
I call it, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal, but beautiful, right? And it is like the addiction to the approval of others that I had to dissolve was brutal. It was brutal.
I'm sorry, I think this is cope. I think this is such cope. He is desperately chasing the approval of others, and everybody can see it. This is fake humility, and it is so transparent. And we know it's fake because he still seems unable to easily say, yes, I did something wrong and I'm sorry. Me, I is all I'm hearing. Like I said, I'm not sure he even mentioned Chris's name in the interview. He and the interviewer just danced around using stupid innuendos and referring to it as the mistake, or what happened at the Oscars, or something you feel changed your life, rather than that time you hit that guy in the face over a primary school level insult.
Of finding that way to be able to be with my own humanity, and to be able to not be perfect, but be human, and find a higher power in my humanity than I found in my constellation of ideas of perfection that we called Will Smith.
What the fuck is he talking about? He's been spending too much time with Jada and has picked up on her talent of being able to rebrand her wrongs as necessary and beautiful signs of growth.
The fullness of who I am, to allow that to be better than Will Smith. The honesty and the authenticity and the broader spectrum of the possibilities of who I am is actually better than Will Smith. You know, so that, like, working in that space of authenticity and honesty and imperfection, allowing that to grow into a higher perfection than the imagery of Will Smith is where I am as an artist and as a human right now.
So you see, him slapping a comedian over a joke made him a better person, even better than he was before. He talks like he wants us to believe he's let go of his image of perfection, but the way he's talking demonstrates the opposite. See, he's using word salad and pretentious language to make himself sound deep and distract from the real meaning. In what he said, it might sound like he's taking responsibility and acknowledging that he's not perfect, but what he's actually done is presented his wrongdoing as a normal and human thing to do. But more than that, he's actually an enlightened human. Because he's realised that the bad things he did give him a higher power in his humanity than in his constellation of ideas of perfection that we called Will Smith. So sort of like Jesus, acknowledging that part of him is not just God, but also man. Like how Jesus was both God and man, and a lot of Jesus' power came from his humanity and not just his godliness, just like Will Smith's. He's not God, you guys. He's human, just like you. The self-importance of celebrities makes me want to vomit. You're not saving the fucking world with your shitty raps. Sit the fuck down and discover what actual humility means, because this obscene parody of it is disgusting.
Do you feel like the music kind of allows you to start again a little bit?
Yeah, it's like back to the absolute origin of self, the crux of me. Yeah, but it's like it is the exploration of the what I call the despicable prisoners, right? So it's the parts of myself that have been banished, the parts of myself I'm not allowed to talk about on the radio, the part of myself I'm not even allowed to acknowledge is real. And it's like the opening up of the looking at the despicable prisoners, and then all of a sudden they started turning into songs, right? They looked like monsters, and then all of a sudden they started turning into beautiful lyrics. They started turning into these magnificent ideas, and these energies in me I was so scared of are now turning into power. They're turning into art, and they're turning into power. They're turning into confidence. They're turning into loving eyes. So it's really a delicious time in my life.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He's so full of it. 1, cope again. 2, how is this not just another avoidance tactic? Rebranding the dark parts of yourself as being essential to your artistic output, but they're essential to make you powerful and loving. You're rebranding the dark parts of yourself as being powerful and loving and essential to your artistic output. Is that, like I said, not just another psychological ego trick where you don't have to destroy the godlike image you have of yourself even when you did a bad thing? Because they're now beautiful monsters. Also, I'm sorry, what fucking beautiful lyrics? What beautiful lyrics did they turn into? What were they, Will? I'm a Libra, but I identify as a Cancer. That beautiful lyric. I like pretty girls. Was that one of the other amazing, fucking groundbreaking, beautiful lyrics you're on about? Are these the beautiful lyrics of which you speak? Get over yourself. Loving eyes. What does that even mean? You loving eyes. They talk absolute shit. Loving eyes. See, now Will's shitty actions, they're now loving eyes. Celebrities take any accountability for something they did wrong without trying to twist it into a statement of their beautiful power challenge. I'd never really thought of Will Smith as narcissistic. Humiliated, lost, and mistreated by his wife, yes. Narcissistic, not so much. Until I watched this man at 56 years old, still being apparently unable to demonstrate any kind of humility or perspective on what should have been a wake-up call moment. And for the record, I'm not calling him a narcissist. I'm just saying that, he sounds narcissistic. Nothing was learnt, no growth happened, and in fact, thinking about Mr. Smith's entire career, I'm wondering if there's been any growth at all, creatively, musically, psychologically, which did lead me to think, what happens when you get famous young and learn to perform your identity before you ever find out who you are? Is performing a character arc the closest you know how to get to real personal growth? Is poetically recounting your dark night of the soul the only way you know how to have one? Do you ever stop seeing yourself as the only hero in the narrative? Does your personality properly develop when, for years, all your attention has gone on developing your image instead? Do you ever learn the difference between person and performance?
Because what happened was our characters were trying to have a relationship. And if you're going to wear a mask, then the person's trying to love your mask. Right? They're trying to love the image that you're presenting, but that's not what you really need. Right.
Even in his intimate relationships, he talks about performing and playing a character. Jojo Siwa might spring to mind as another example of this, swinging wildly from extreme identity to extreme identity, confusing even herself apparently with who she is. Squeaky clean child star, or the founder of gay pop? Lesbian edgy rock star, or traditional country singer? Does brand become a stand-in for personality for so long that you can't tell the difference? When, in your formative years, you learn to meld who you are around an audience reaction, What does that do to your psyche? Do you ever truly grow up? Some say people remain psychologically trapped and emotionally stunted at the age they became famous, with no need anymore to develop themselves beyond what might be pleasing to an audience. Are you doomed to live the rest of your life as an empty shell with no true identity of your own but what the public project onto you? Do you even exist beyond the sound of the applause? And when the warmth of the audience's attention turns to cold disapproval, will you be able to cope with that? Or will you embarrass yourself further by desperately trying to rewind the clock back to your glory days? Will you become that old cliche, a washed up celebrity pretending time hasn't moved on and everything is still as it was in your youth when you were adored and still cool? Thinking that what made you cool at 25, having the attention of pretty girls, is going to be the thing that makes you cool at 56. People look up to 56-year-olds for different reasons. 56-year-old men still relying on the validation of pretty girls to make themselves feel worthy are sad and pathetic, and most of the young pretty girls think so too. But that's the problem. I don't think Will has grown up much, if at all, over the course of his career. I know fame and performance and audience attention are a slightly different thing than the topic of this video, which is wanting women's or his mother's or mummy Jada's approval specifically, but I think one thing leads into the other. It sounds like people thinking he's the kind of guy so successful he can keep a woman is the thing that validates him. It sounds like he sees having a loyal woman as the ultimate symbol he's made it, because he thought material gain would guarantee him a happy relationship. And he needs people to see that and perform that idea of himself to both the world and his wife. And now that image has shattered, he's having an identity crisis, is what it looks like, because he's based all his worth on that idea, an idea that everyone now knows is false. And I think maintaining that facade and holding onto that image for so long has prevented genuine growth. Like I said at the beginning, placing your identity on something external is always a dangerous game. When it works, it seems fine. When everyone thought he was cool and successful, yeah, sure, he seemed to be happy and thriving. I mean, behind the scenes, it still impacted his relationships, like his kids feeling he couldn't connect with them because he was more obsessed with the image of them, but it still looks like happiness on the outside. But when the thing that you made your identity shatters, if you place your worth on public approval, you will have an identity crisis when you lose that. It's almost like watching a wounded animal thrashing around, trying desperately to get the approval back he had when he was young by regressing to years ago. Just look at this album cover for his album based on a true story. It's like he's trying to be the Fresh Prince again. I've not seen him dress like that for a very long time. Let it go, Will. The 90s are gone. They're in the rearview mirror. We passed it over a couple of decades ago. There's no rewinding the clock. Look, I'm not saying he can't make music anymore or that he's too old to be cool, but inauthentically hanging on to your youth is notoriously not the way to do that. I mean it when I say I don't think he's matured much past that 15-year-old kid who decided to be an actor and strive for success so he'll never be cheated on again. If anything, with age, it looks like that pattern has gotten worse. Using materialism and fame as a coping mechanism for failing or unfulfilling relationships, or your insecurity, because the relationships with women serve the purpose of validating him, from the sounds of it. He still seems like the kid wanting his mummy to say that he's great. It's like he's regressed as a man back to a boy, because he's never not been a boy seeking approval. The man was the performance, and now the performance has shattered. Everyone looked at the Oscar slap moment and saw it, probably correctly, as a man at breaking point. A man who'd endured public humiliation for so long at the hands of his wife, but who'd been so manipulated and gaslit by said wife that he was unable to place the blame for his rage and powerlessness at her door, and instead it all came out at a comedian taking a jab at her. And I think it did mean something that the joke was at Jada's expense. After so many years, in his own words, of doing everything to make her proud of him and telling him he was a good boy, of thinking his fame would prevent him feeling emasculated again, and then when that fails, I don't think it's a reach to see the slap as one final attempt to impress her, to defend her, to try and make her see you as a man again. That, and his recent Pretty Girl song, I don't think it's a surprise that people have described him as masculinity in crisis. And I don't think most people realise just how much of a huge thing this was for Will specifically to do. Will is famously incredibly against violence and against men being violent because he grew up with a violent father. So this clip is from their Red Table Talk. This is before the slap happened, where Will details how he broke up with Jada when they first started going out over disrespectful talk. Jada told him to shut the fuck up in front of a room full of people and his toddler son. So this is when they first got together. Apparently Will whacked her with a newspaper, took her aside, and then said...
We went in the other room, and I said, Jada, this is the deal. I grew up in a household where I watched my father punch my mother in the face. Damn. And I will not create a space, an interaction with a person where there's profanity and violence. If you have to talk to me like that, we can't be together.
Wow.
We're not going to use any profanity in our interactions. We're not going to raise our voice. We're not going to be violent. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So then Will broke up with her, and she still like swore at him back, so he told her to get out. And then Jada responded by saying,
I said, get out, right? And she was looking, that was the dumbest crap she had ever heard. And she was like, wait, so you would break up with me over some words? I was like, yeah, I just did.
He got quite emotional as he was saying this. It must have been a lot to push him over the edge to break that hard rule and engage in 3 things that he doesn't stand for: violence, profanity, and raising his voice. He did all 3 of those things to Chris Rock over a G.I. Jane joke. And a huge part of that will be, as he himself said, probably a result of undealt with childhood trauma bubbling away for years and being repressed. But I also think being desperate to live up to this image for women and the public is going to be a huge psychological burden. Wearing a mask for decades as the happy guy, perfect family man, high energy, liked and respected by everyone entertainer, wearing that mask, and then when this image cracks and the public start to see the real you, the you deny exists even to yourself, that's got to feel a little bit like a death of yourself. So not only do you have the weight of a false mask that becomes exhausting over decades, but you have the added humiliation of it being shattered in front of the world and your adoring public now mocking you for it. I think having that respect matters a lot to Will. To be seen as the man, and then the reality comes out that you're the opposite of that your wife has basically cuckolded you and manipulated you into being okay with it as some statement of her freedom, while she publicly admits that for decades you could never make her happy, and even after everything you've built and strived for, you were still not enough. That the insecure little boy within you never got mummy's approval. Like, damn. Well, maybe defending her honour on the world stage would finally make you good enough. One more humiliation, a comedian taking a pop at your wife's attractiveness, was just too much to bear. I think it does matter as well that the joke was about Jada's beauty. I think that does matter. The public seeing that he had a beautiful wife who was loyal to him was what drove Will to achieve everything he has, to finally prove to himself that he was good enough. So yeah, I think the jab at her, like, attractiveness, I think that was a huge part of it, was like another final kind of humiliating thing for him, I think. That's why I think he didn't apologise properly, because I think he truly was hurt by it and refuses to admit that Jada's the one who did the hurting and humiliating, not Chris. As Chris Rock said in his special, what did he say? Jada hurt him more than he ever hurt me. And I think that's true. And I am just going to take a moment to talk about how much Jada threw him under the bus. She still publicly embarrasses him, which is crazy, because he mostly does keep her name out of his mouth. From what I hear and see, like, he rarely talks about her. Like, does anyone remember the interview she did a while after the slap? I can't remember what year it's from, I'll put it on the screen. She did an interview where she publicly spoke about, like, the slap. She basically washed her hands of him and said, I don't know why he did it. She showed zero loyalty and acted like it had nothing to do with her, because apparently it was so unexpected because she wasn't even his wife anymore. They just kept it a secret, and they'd lived separate lives since 2016. Yeah, so I don't believe her. I don't believe her for several reasons. I mean, the round table talk where she said marriage is for life. So the round table talk where she said that marriage is for the rest of their lives and their partners always, and she's a ride or die chick and will always love him. She said all those things. That conversation happened in 2018, 2 years into their alleged separate lives. Does that sound like 2 people who have separated to you? Them saying that? She's a ride or die chick. Marriage is the rest of their lives. Partners always should always love him. Do you say that to someone that you've decided to live completely separate lives with and you're no longer married to? Do you say that 2 years into a separation? Do you? I don't know if you do, Jada. In that conversation, she spoke about how divorce was something she'd never considered doing. The video was titled How They Redefined Their Union. So it was like Will and Jada talk how they redefined their union. Union normally means like united, like together, right? Right? Not separate. Isn't it the opposite? United and separate. So it's separate lives or union. Interesting, Jada. In that video as well, they said how they're the happiest they've ever been, and they also said that they don't have any deal breakers anymore. As in, they no longer have any deal breakers to their relationship or their marriage, because they're all about unconditional love. No matter what anyone does, they don't have deal breakers. What happened to that, Jada? What happened to that idea? Personally, I think she's a liar. Why also would she not be public with that information during all the backlash she was getting for her entanglement? Why would you do that? Also in the video where they talk about her entanglement, which again, that happened after the 2018 talk that I just mentioned, so then after that again, they had the entanglement talk on the red table. They talk in that video like they're still together. And why would she not, like, when she's getting all that backlash for the entanglement, why would she not just say, well, we're not together anymore? They honestly, if you watch that video, that looks like a couple that decided to stay together and work through it. They talk like they worked it out. And if they were apart, why wouldn't she say that to avoid being attacked for treating her husband terribly if he was no longer her husband? Why wouldn't she say that? I think she's trying to rewrite the narrative with hindsight, and for some reason Will won't like correct it or speak out against her. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion, given how they've talked in the past. In my opinion, she's a liar and a terrible person. Also, Jada will accept no responsibility, talking like she's the hero.
I could tell it bothered you. You did an eye roll. Like,
right. Yeah, and I did that eye roll not so much for me, and I think this is really important, but the fact that there could be a jab at alopecia. I'm really shocked because, mind you, I'm not there. We haven't called each other husband and wife in a long time. But I'm like, what is going on right
keep
now?
my wife's name
out of your
Yes.
mouth.
Yeah.
I did not walk in there as his wife, but I knew the instant that I saw what was happening, I was his wife. I'm walking out of here as your wife now, and I'm gonna be by your side through this.
Oh, the angelic ex-wife who's supporting him through such a difficult time, even though she had no obligations to him anymore. She's just further distancing herself and humiliating him while playing the selfless saint. That's how she speaks about herself. You know what would make me believe that she was genuine? If she took some accountability, because everyone knows it's partly her fault. If she just said like, yeah, Will was hurting and I understand and recognise now that I had a part to play in that. Because I spoke about our personal lives on my podcast, he's been under huge public scrutiny recently and I regret that. I think the insult to me was the last straw and I regret, bringing him on my podcast and us talking about it, and I definitely had a part to play. Like, the fact she can't even help him out, she throws him completely under the bus and is like, well, why would he do that? That's so embarrassing for him because we're not even married. Why would he defend me when we're not even married anymore? We're like separated. But she won't. She's still talking like, but I was still there for him. She's saying like, I had nothing to do with it. It's all his fault. She's throwing him under the bus and humiliating him further in the eyes of the public, while trying to pretend that she's so noble. She's like, it was all him. Isn't that so embarrassing for him? I didn't have anything to do with it, guys. It wasn't me. I'm innocent. But also, like, I'm so good because I was there for him, even though this had nothing to do with me and it's not my fault. She can't take any accountability. She's both victim and hero in her self-constructed narrative, simultaneously the innocent woman unfairly blamed for her husband's actions that she had nothing to do with, but also the saviour who's going to be there for him anyway, even though he really, really embarrassed her. Really embarrassed her because she's not even his wife. That's really embarrassing. And Will still speaks about her like she'll always be there for him, and everyone wonders why he can't see what the public can see, that she has zero loyalty to him. Because in truth, I think he still doesn't want to let go of that childhood picture that was so important to him and admit that fairy tale wasn't the reality. But I think it backfired. Not only did having the wife from the life he built make him feel like more of a man, not only did it not do that, ultimately it seems to have made him feel like less of one. I spoke about Liz in my last video and how basing all your worth on your beauty will not bring you good men. Same is true for men like Will. If you see your wealth and fame as the most valuable thing about you to bring to a woman, as the only thing that will prevent you getting cheated on, then you are not going to attract a woman who values you for who you are. If you are desperate for a woman's approval and would do anything to get it, then you might end up with a partner who wants to take advantage of somebody like that. What you won't get is a loving relationship and the validation you were chasing. You got to be okay with yourself. You can't rely on someone else to totally validate you. Will Smith is the great cautionary tale that becoming an immensely successful man with all the money in the world will not win you the respect of women if you don't respect yourself. It will not validate you if you're still unhappy or have childhood insecurities you never dealt with. It might act as a plaster for a while, but not forever. I think the reason people speak about Will Smith in terms of a crisis of masculinity is because he went from what I would consider a hugely positive masculine role model, successful, driven, happily married, a reliable father, to being seen as, well, cucked. There's no other word for it. And now it's like he's doing weirdly stereotypical masculine things to try and get that respect back. It's kind of what it looks like. And I know Jada is easy to blame, and she certainly played her part. But like I said, I think this all really stems from Will's own insecurities, that he felt he needed to project the perfect image of a man who had it all more than he needed to live it. That behind closed doors, his family always felt the performance was more important than they were. That his need for approval was the real driving force. A need for approval will never win you respect. That is something I do agree with the red pill on. I spoke about that in my Nice Guys video. I know that doesn't mean you should turn into Andrew Tate and act like a selfish prick. That's just a different type of insecurity and performativity. But what it means is you find your own inner stability that's more important than the need to please. And I think it seems like Will Smith has swung a little too much in that direction, the other direction, in a really odd way. Like rapping about pretty girls and slapping people on stage and freestyling about how tough he is, while still being driven by the underlying need for approval to the point he can't just like face up to what he did wrong in a genuine feeling way. which makes him seem more like an immature little boy than ever. People don't read that as masculine. I also think this is what happens sometimes with simps and nice guys. Like, a lot of the time, they can often be the ones who act out in aggressive ways. I talked about that in my video on I'm Alex, the nice guys video. Arguably, he spent a lot of his career intentionally mocking traditionally masculine behaviours in a way that felt quite over the top and performative, only for him to be revealed as engaging in actual toxic masculinity, threatening violence against his girlfriend and also allegedly doing it. Some might say because he himself felt weak and emasculated, so he had to take it out on those weaker than him to feel powerful. For the record, I don't think Will is a bad guy in that way, but there are some similarities. Chris Rock is smaller than him. He's not a scary guy, and I think everyone can agree Will has been made to feel weak and emasculated in recent years. I'm of the opinion, and I've said this for a while, that demonising masculinity as a whole isn't going to get rid of it, which, well, I don't think would be a good idea anyway, but it wouldn't do that anyway. I think it would only result in it being suppressed and then coming out in ugly ways. Like anything, it can be channeled positively, and I think Will allowing that type of emasculation did lead to the outburst. I'll be honest, I think a lot of people agree. There is such a thing as positive masculinity, and I think Will, he really did get walked all over in someone's stilettos, I think is what it looked like. So, is that it? Is Will's reputation dead forever? I don't think so. I think he needs to fire his current PR team because they're making an absolute mess of this and going about his new image in the worst way. What Will should have done is speak humbly and simply about the Oscar slap. I don't think what he did is unforgivable. It's not unforgivable, not by any stretch. I think what annoys the public more than the slap is how he continues to talk about it with such an air of self-importance and no real sense of accountability, like he's a child. He should have rebranded with humility. I think that would also work more with his age, by the way. I know people don't like to be ageist, but let's not act like there aren't different standards of behaviour for people of different ages. For good reason, I think, because it makes sense. Life experience counts for something. I understand to some extent the ageist argument, but a lot of the time it's like, yeah, but it makes sense. Like, we hold people of different ages to different standards because they have more different experiences and different, anyway. So it does matter in terms of your brand. You need to consider it. A young guy coming across as a bit arrogant or self-important or naive is more endearing and forgivable than a 56-year-old man doing it, right? Like, Will should have rebranded with honesty. Real honesty. Not comparing yourself to Jesus, but the attitude of someone who's older, who's made mistakes in life and come out wiser and more humble on the other side. Someone who's finally found peace and self-worth within themselves and not the adoring public. I think that genuinely would have worked. Unfortunately, they're trying to rebrand him like he's 25, and you can't do that. The public do not react the same way. But like I said earlier, I think it feels really fake now, the optimism that like he had when he was younger. It felt very natural, the goofy kind of optimism. It feels really performative now, and I don't know if that's. It looks like he's almost gonna cry when I've seen him in interviews, even with he's smiling, and even like it just feels so fake. And I think if he was just let some of that sadness through, or some of the the rough spots he's been through, like if he just let some of that like heaviness through when you know what I mean, in interviews or in his art, if he was just like, yeah, that was rough, that was hard, and just spoke humbly, calmly, like, you know. So anyway, Will, fire your PR team, own your mistakes properly this time, ditch the ego and self-importance, stop chasing approval, and I think you could win people's respect back. You could be seen as the man again. Not in the same way, but in a stable, secure, beyond the need to have others' approval type of way. An older, wiser role model who knows they made mistakes and can offer guidance to young people on not doing what he did. I really think he should have written music and done interviews with that energy. With a quiet, wise, and self-assured masculinity that no longer needs the approval of a mother figure to feel like a man. He could have done that. Unfortunately, that requires genuine artistic and psychological growth. And why do that when you can keep making the same mistakes you've been making since your 20s? Well, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if there was anything you didn't like, that was Acis's idea, so please contact him directly with your complaints. And look after yourselves.